Today we're going to talk about in time, on time trust. And there's a song that I like that says, He's in time, on time, every time for me. He was in time for the children of Israel when they crossed the mighty Red Sea. He was on time when the walls of Jericho fell at Joshua's feet. So if there's times that we're worried and discouraged, we don't have to wonder, will he be? It'll be in time, on time, every time for me. So I was thinking about some times in my life where God was right there, right on time, and he showed me what to do. And we know that today he's still the same, yesterday, today, and forever, and he will help us. I was thinking about the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus 14 and 21. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And verse 22 says, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left hand. And one time Elijah was going through a rough time, and God told him, 1 Kings 17 and 3, get thee hence, hide thyself by the brook Cherith. And verse 4 says, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee. And so the ravens do what God tells them to do. And the ravens in verse 6 said, brought him bread and flesh in the morning and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank by the brook. Okay, then the brook dried up, but God had another plan. In verse 9, he told the widow woman, he said, go to Zarephath. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman to sustain thee. So he got there, and it didn't look like a very good situation. But she said, I have only a handful of meal and a little bit of oil. But he said, go and make me a cake, and God will provide for you. And so she did it. She listened. And verse 15, and she and he and her house did eat for many days because she obeyed God. So I want to remember that always, that no matter what's going on in my life, that God is always on time when I look to him and trust in him. I thought about this being Easter week. And so I read this wonderful quote. It says, trust the man who died for you. And so I'm thankful that we can trust him. We can't trust a lot of people nowadays. We can't trust jobs. We can't trust government systems, but we can trust him. And there's another song says, I trust in God. I know he cares for me on mountains high or on life's stormy sea. Though billows roll, he feeds my soul. My heavenly Father watches over me. And I want to share a story with you that really touched me. It's called Breaking Free, and it's in my Chocolate for the Woman's Soul book. And so I'm going to read part of this story to you, just kind of skim through it and share with you. There was a lady that was in a prison situation, and it was very tough for her. She thought she was going to be going to one prison and be released. She had been arrested for fraud. She came from a very abusive background, and her father got her involved in this. And we don't know how old she was or anything, but she had been in prison for 8 months. And so she was going to be transferred to what she thought was a better facility. Her husband would be able to come and see her better. And she found out that she wasn't. When she got off the plane, she realized she wasn't where she thought she was. And so she waited until she could make a call to her husband, and she called him, and she was crying. And she says, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think I'm going to make it out of here. And so he, of course, couldn't do much, but he said, well, find out where you are and I will write to you. Don't cry. So she looked around and she saw the name of it was Welcome to the Renaissance, was the area that she was in. And so she got a better feeling about it, and God helped her through it. And she told her husband, it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. So she went back up the stairs to where she was to be living. And she said, I knew God had not forgotten me, nor was I truly in the hands of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I was right where I was supposed to be. I was safe. So sometimes we don't think the situation looks very good like she did, but that God had a plan for her. But suddenly I tensed. I realized I had breached an important rule in prison. I had been rude to my cellmate by not introducing myself to them before demanding the location of the phone. She had gone in and was so troubled. She wanted to talk to her husband. She dropped the things on the bed where she was to be roomed, and she asked them to show her where the phone was, and they told her, and then she rushed out of there to go call her husband. So she knew she was in for probably some trouble when she went back. Politeness and manners carry a very high priority in prison. With so many people crowded together, even a perceived lack of respect has an extreme price. I wondered if I would be facing my first fight at Lexington very soon. As I stepped into the room, I noticed that someone had made my bed and my clothes were missing. We always expect the worst, don't we? I looked at the woman in the bed next to mine. I should have known. When you have so little, even an extra pair of pants or a t-shirt has great appeal. I assumed the bed was made as an exchange for the clothes. I sighed and opened my locker just to stall the moment of confrontation. I knew I would have to fight for my clothes. But instead of an empty locker, what I found were my clothes neatly hung up, as well as a supply of toothpaste, deodorant, shampoo, and even lotion. The women in the room who had so little themselves had shared with me who had even less. I bowed my head and smiled. I was more than safe. I was blessed. As I later learned, Renaissance is a medical unit for older and infirm inmates. Why I was sent there is still a mystery, since I was neither ill nor elderly, but I was safe. I had been transferred to be closer home. The Lexington facility wasn't as close to my home in Kansas as the Texas one where she thought she was going to be going, but it was still a major improvement over California. I introduced myself to the women in the room and thanked them for their generosity. None of them would admit to having given me anything. After taking a shower, I pulled back my sheets to get into bed and noticed one more act of kindness. God is always on time. He knows what we need. One of the ladies had taken the time to baby powder the sheets, making them silky instead of stiff and scratchy. I felt an overwhelming love build inside of me, and I thought, God, my God, you love me enough to have someone baby powder my sheets. God is so good to us, even in the midst of a bad situation that she was in prison. God used somebody to help her. So we know that God is always in time, on time, every time, if we trust in him. There's another song that says, I can trust Jesus. I can trust Jesus. He never once has failed to meet my needs. He is my strong tower, my strength in my weakest hour. I can trust Jesus because he's always taking care of me. So remember, if you're going through a hard time today, like we all do, and he reminds us, he's in time, on time, if we trust in him. God is always on time. He's on time with his time, not ours. Have a good day.